Don't shoot me. That's not nice. I'm being
That just
assaulted.
makes me so sad, like how
I'm
people
being shot.
That's
You
really
killed
good.
me.
Yeah.
I'm being shot at. I don't like this.
You killed me.
No, we gotta accept. We gotta.
You want to know one of my dream jobs, though, which is a little weird for some people, maybe, but for me, I would just love to be able to put pieces of shit like that in jail. But since I look so young, if I covered up my tattoos and like dressed like kiddish, you know, so like I look like I'm underage, and I catch people like trying to online shit, you know, like to catch a predator stuff. I would, yes, I would love that.
Do that, right?
I want to do it. I would love to do it.
If you call up a predator, like if you try to find one on like one of those dating websites, and then you call up the police, they'll like
Wait, I'm the only one alive?
Yeah.
What? Yeah, I was flattened. This killed me. I didn't kill you.
Oh, there's two alive.
It wasn't me.
I want to do it. Like, when I was, I don't remember how old I was, but I was living in Eldon, Missouri. And I lived right next door to one of my, like, best friends. She was fucking awesome. But we got on into a live chat room. And I was young. I was, like, probably 14 or so, if not younger. I can't remember how old I was. But, there was a guy that was trying to meet up with us, and
Only 6 seconds left.
we were on webcam and shit, and he was like, it was bad, but that was after what happened to me, so I knew it was wrong. So I told my parents, and they came in the room while we did it. We were on webcam, and they were, like, my mom was on this side, and my stepdad was on the right side, and then her parents were in the room, but you couldn't see them in the camera view. And we got on there, and he started saying nasty shit, and I got very uncomfortable because I don't even deal with that kind of stuff. And my mom could tell I was uncomfortable, so she did it out of instinct. She put her hand on my arm, like, it's okay, and he saw, so he got off. So we didn't get to catch him, but that's the whole point. We had cops in the room with us waiting to be able to get his shit, but he got off. But that's why I want to do it, because I want to catch fucking nasty-ass people like that. Like, for real.
You guys want to hear another school story that's not about, like, killing or murder or anything? I almost killed myself. I almost fell off my killing or murder. I almost fell off my myth. This was back in elementary school.
It is like a legitimate job. Oh shit.
It was 5th grade. Oh, I just see cars flying next to me.
I killed myself again.
Grade, and it was like at the end of the school year, and so we were all packed up, and everything was like in the hallways and stuff. And you know, good day. You know, it started raining. We were like, hey, look, it's raining. It's just what you do when you're at school. And before you just kind of get bored. You don't know what to talk about, so you just talk about the weather for some odd reason. Yeah. And yeah, sounds about my life. And then what we see out of the window was a tornado. Oh.
Hell no.
And so we went into the hallway. Was it like a bad one? Yeah, it was a bad one. Like a real bad one. And so we went into the hallways, we got down on the knees, and everybody was screaming and crying, because that's just what black chicks do during that stuff.
Oh, damn!
And, what did you say? I said that's what they... Oh, God, it's 42. We're fucked, bro.
Those what chicks?
You keep saying
black chicks. The ones that think they're talking with everybody. You know what I'm talking about. It went like right by the school, and like, you know, like they say the tornado sounds like a train going down the tracks.
Yeah. Hey, I'd be freaking out.
That's
Yeah, I'd be freaking out, and I'm not black. I'd be freaking the fuck out. I freak out at home, man.
Okay. I actually have a lot of school stories now that I think about it. If you guys want me to tell you like almost all of them. I don't care.
I'm trying to think of like crazy shit that's happened to me. You wanna know something fucked up that people used to do to me? When I was in school, because I'm 4'11", I'm really small. They used to throw me in trash cans and think it was funny. Yeah.
I just seen you just get taken by that car.
Hey, I blew myself up with the rocket, so it didn't count against me. Oh my God! Yeah, am I the only one left? Yes, you're the only one left.
I'm still 4'11".
Guys, you want to hear the saddest thing ever?
Yes. No, I don't.
That was right above your head, bro.
No, it's not like... That's right.
Oh my God.
So
I was in kindergarten, okay, and I remember
don't know how I'm surviving.
And so you know how they have those little you know how they have those little domes and you can like climb up and stuff.
One time I pooped my
Yeah.
pants in kindergarten.
Oh shit.
You incorporating young English girls, are you? We've been making young English girls, have you? Who's been making English girls? Huh? Who's been making English girls? You tell me, listen to me.
Girls are innocent!
Who's been making English girls?
They are innocent!
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.
what's up? This is Introverted Smiles, and I'm giving a shout out to Converted to Islam channel. He has 30,000 subscribers, and he recently, in less than 24 hours, revealed that he has left Islam, but he did it in such a great way that I had to give him a shout out. He was still saying, peace be unto you, I only wish peace on the Muslims, this is why I left Islam. And basically, in a nutshell, I'll put the link in the description, but he was saying that it was mainly the hadith that said that Muhammad's companions asked Muhammad if they could have sex with slaves that were defeated in battle. Their husbands were defeated in battle, and the companions were hesitant to have sex with them. So Muhammad said it was okay. And this is an issue that troubles a lot of ex-Muslims, and that's why they also leave the faith as well. It's hadiths like this. He's coming from the moral standpoint of it, and it also seems that he has a problem with the concept of slavery itself in Islam, and this is something that we honestly need to discuss. I don't think any Muslim, I would say the majority of Muslims don't know about these hadiths, and it's something that we need to tackle and address from a moral standpoint. A question I'll often ask is, to a Muslim, is, are you willing to let the Taliban apply this hadith? For example, let's say the Taliban are in war and they capture some slaves, and let's say that slave was your sister, for example. Will you be willing to say, this is from God, this is what I should do? And that's pretty much the question. A lot of Muslims don't really know how to answer this, so I ask Muslims to question the validity of hadith in the first place. Is this hadith moral? And the answer I got from the Imam when I asked this question is usually, well, the sex is consensual between the slaves and the person. So this is something that troubles us, because if you just defeat someone's family in war, are you willing to have one of your family members, whether it's your aunt or your sister or your mother, have sex with the so-called enemy immediately? How would you feel? Let's say if you had American soldiers invading a Muslim country, and they had this belief of wanting to have sex immediately after you're captured. And I would say, from the moral standpoint, if I was a woman, I wouldn't feel comfortable with this rule. So I love the way that he laid it out. He read the hadith in Arabic and English. And I called the Muslims who's watching this guy, don't react violently, don't take offense to what he's saying. He's just speaking his mind. He's speaking what he finds to be the truth. And for those Muslims that lend him an ear and that are open-minded, I applaud you. I really do. And I see a lot of change lately in the Muslims in my comments. They're giving me support and saying, you have some good points, we have to talk about this. So I am really proud of that. I still have, of course, the Muslims, I understand, like, when I call out your religion or your way of life, it's like as if I was insulting your father or I was insulting your mother. And that's definitely not what I intend to the case. I don't intend to hurt anybody, but it's just the way it is. When I question my beliefs, it hurt me deep down inside. So there has to be a point where you have to be willing to be offended for your beliefs. And all I have to say is, let's talk about these hadiths. Let's talk about the concept of slavery in Islam. Is it moral or is it not moral? So this is the question. You have to put together the context of how Muhammad lived his life, and the Quran and the tafsir and the hadiths in context, the full picture. You can't just continue to cherry pick other verses from the Quran that have nothing to do with what is at hand. So this is what I call all Muslims to do. We have to make some changes in our people. I still consider the Muslims, I understand what it was like being Muslim, right? So I don't call for bigotry against Muslims, and this is to the other subscribers of mine as well, who just have this mindset, oh, let's just nuke Mecca, let's just kill everybody, any of that stuff. I don't promote that on my channel. I'm not closed-minded like that, because I know what it was like to be a Muslim, and looking back at it when I was Muslim myself and devout, now I understand what people thought of me. They thought I was just this crazy, evil person. When I showed pictures of myself with a long beard and wearing the Islamic clothing, people are like, wow, you look like a really scary person. And I just wanted to say, you don't have to be scared of Muslims in our country if they're willing to have a dialogue, if they're willing to be peaceful as well. It's not like they're using this concept of taqiyya, which I think is a very overused term when it comes to non-Muslims applying that to Muslims. It's more of that Muslims don't really know their religion, and you just have to be there willing to talk to them. And you have to look at it from a scholarly approach and look at the text itself and question the text. For example, is it very moral for Muhammad to have sex with Aisha when she was 9 years old and he married her when she was 6 years old? Things of that nature. We have to have these types of discussions. So I just wanted to say, hey, converted to Islam, brother, if you're there, I'm willing to talk because I studied this text as well. It's not like I just am angry. Well, I guess I do appear angry on my videos sometimes, and I'm trying to tone that down, trying to control that, and let's get back to the core issues of the text and make this thing work. So I just say thank you so much, and peace out to everyone.
Hello, peace be upon you. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Brother Ismail. I've been a Muslim for 16 years. But in the past...
This will be my last video on YouTube. I have for some time now become very weary of the debate, and I feel it's time to call it a day. However, this channel will continue and will be maintained by others. To my Muslim friends I say, Lakum dinukum waliya din, or rather, waliya la din. I will, however, try to briefly answer the question I get asked most often. Why did you leave Islam? It wasn't one particular issue or argument that led me to lose my faith, though there were many that had a powerful effect. Nor was it that I discovered anything new about Islam that I didn't already know. It was basically because of a change in perspective. I started to take a much more critical look at Islam. I'm not entirely sure how or what caused this change, but once it happened, the whole story Islam presented, and which I had for so long taken for granted, began to look increasingly absurd, and my faith slowly began to fall apart. The whole idea that God's ultimate aim for mankind is that they pick the correct, unfounded, dubious, and unsupported ancient claim, so he can eternally reward or roast them, who could easily provide undeniable and irrefutable evidence of his existence and of what religion is true, but instead keeps himself hidden and ensures there is plenty of reasonable doubt, then makes the punishment for disbelief so obscenely excessive and cruel. A God who does not need worship, yet demands worship, who does not need to create, but does so for the benefit of his creation, even though most of these wretched creatures will not benefit from being created, who wants us to freely choose to love and worship him, yet threatens us if we don't. A parochial God who ignores most of the world in favor of a small area of desert, who did his best stuff 2,000 years ago, then took early retirement 1,400 years ago, who sent 3 crucial books but allowed the first 2 to be terribly corrupted before deciding he'd protect the 3rd one, which of course he could have done from the start, avoiding massive schisms and lots of people having to be boiled, roasted, barbecued, and various other delightful recipes from his cookbook. Who will make his messages so ambiguous, misunderstood, and easily misinterpreted that people will forever be arguing and killing each other over it. Who will make the descriptions in his book, like Adam and Eve, look as if they contradict the scientific evidence. Whose test basically involves killing, starving, maiming, and afflicting these poor creatures with disease, disaster, and congenital defects, then punishes them if they lose faith in him. Who will allow the fundamental criteria for success or failure in this test to largely rest upon where or to whom you are born. But without doubt, the crushing blow to my faith was hell. I simply couldn't believe that if there is a God, he would be so sadistically and pointlessly cruel to torture his flawed and limited creatures without end.
Boiling fluid will be poured down onto their heads, which will melt what is in their bellies and skins. For them will be hooked rods of iron. Whenever in their anguish they try to escape from hell, they shall be dragged back. A fire which encompasses them like the walls and roof of a tent will hem them in. They will cry out for help, but will be granted scorching water like melted brass that will scald their faces. Dragged through scalding, fetid fluid and burnt in the fire. As often as their skins are roasted through, we shall exchange them for new skins. No food except pus. The tree of Zaqqum will be the food of the sinners. Like molten brass, it will boil their insides, like the boiling of scalding water. It will be said, seize him and drag him into the midst of the blazing fire, then pour over his head the torment of the boiling water. They will be given boiling water to drink that
call a God who does this merciful is ridiculous beyond words. Once I looked at these verses with open eyes, my faith simply collapsed. And not because I totally reject the idea that there might be a God, but because if there is a God, I believed he must be better than this. For argument's sake, let's assume I have failed to comprehend God's wisdom. Then God can, of course, eternally roast my skin off, boil my brains, and melt my face over and over again for mistakenly thinking he would be better than this. But let us also, for argument's sake, assume that it is you who are wrong. And if there is a God, he has nothing to do with the descriptions in the Quran or the Bible for that matter. Then who is really insulting him? Is it I who believes God could not be a sadistic monster? Or is it you who believes he is?
This quote is from a former Muslim who said, and I quote, "Muslims are normally good people like everyone else, but then they read the Quran, then they become a killing machine." The woman who said that knows what she's talking about. She's a former Muslim herself who's now facing death threats for spreading the truth about Islam. Dale Hurd brings us her powerful story from the nation of Sweden.
This woman is on a mission. She's not a Muslim, and her Muslim dress is a disguise. Her mission is for Muslims to know what is in the Quran, because she says if more Muslims knew what was in the Quran, more would leave Islam. Mona Walter came to Sweden from Somalia as a war refugee when she was 19. She says she was excited about joining a modern European nation with equal rights for women. But as a young Muslim woman, that was not the Sweden she encountered. In fact, she says it was in Sweden where she first experienced radical Islam on a daily basis.
I discovered Islam here in Sweden. In Somalia, you're just a Muslim. You're just born into Muslim country without knowing the Quran. But when you come to Sweden, then you go to mosque, and there's a Quran, so you have to cover yourself, you have to be a good Muslim.
Walter says she grew up in Somalia never having read the Quran.
So I didn't understand what I was part of. I didn't know who Muhammad was. I didn't know who Allah was. So when I found out, I was upset, I was sad, and I was disappointed.
She says she discovered that Allah is a God who hates, and that Islam is not a religion of peace.
It's about hating and killing those who disagree with Islam. It's about conquering. Muhammad, he was immoral. He was a bloodthirsty man. He was a terrible man. And they can read that in his biography, what he did to Jews, how he raped women, how he killed people. I mean, he killed everyone who didn't agree with him.
Discouraged, she left Islam and became an atheist, until one day a family relative encouraged her to read the Bible. She still remembers the first time she read Matthew chapter 5 verse 44, where Jesus said to love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you.
It was very strange for me, love your enemy, because in Islam you have to kill your enemy. Kill your enemy and kill everyone who refuses Islam. But Jesus Christ, it was all about love and peace and forgiveness and tolerance. And for some reason I needed that.
She went to see Pastor Faoud Rasho, a Syrian immigrant who ministers to former Muslims in Sweden.
She started to believe, and she came to me. That was the beginning of her trusting.
I was so happy. I was filled with joy. Then I accepted Jesus Christ.
Mona says the Lord gave her a burden for Muslims who still do not know the truth about Islam, and she began to copy verses from the Quran and hand them out on the street to Muslim women.
Sometimes they listen, sometimes they become very upset, and I just told them that, you know, that your husband, he have a right to beat you if you don't obey him. And say, no, he does not say that. Yes, it says that. I thought that if I tell them about Muhammad and about the Quran and this God of Islam who hates, who kills, who discriminates women, maybe they will have a choice and leave.
But in politically correct Sweden, Mona Walter has come under attack for simply telling Muslims what is in the Quran.
And I've been called Islamophobe, and yeah, you've been bought, you're a house neighbor, and stuff like that, terrible things.
She has also been called a racist. Walter warns that Islamic radicalism is a serious threat in Sweden and says Swedish society should care more about women trapped in Islam.
They will think like, oh, we're in Sweden, we have freedom of religion. But Muslim women don't have a freedom of religion. They live under the law of Allah, not under Swedish law. So they will suppose everyone have a freedom of religion. We don't have freedom of religion. It's not for Muslim women. It's for everyone else.
She lives under death threats and sometimes travels with police protection. She wanted to show us Muslim areas around Gothenburg, but had to first dress as a Muslim. She believes if she were to show her face, she would be attacked.
I never go to those areas just to be near me, just to be named flesh and blood, Mona. I never get out of there alive. I mean, Muslims are normally good people, like everyone else. But when they read Quran, then they become a killing machine. This so-called ISIS or Al-Shabaab or Boko Haram, they're not extremists. They're not fanatical, or they're just a good Muslim. Good Muslim who follow the teachings of Islam. The Prophet Muhammad, he did that. They're doing just what he did.
Walter now uses videos and speaking appearances to spread her message, and she says she won't stop, even though her life is in danger. Dale Hurd, CBN News, in Gothenburg, Sweden.
Amazing, you're an Islamophobe. If you tell what's in the Quran, you're guilty of hate speech if you pass out quotes from the Quran. Ladies and gentlemen, we're not hating anybody, but there's a little booklet here that has been made available to us called Islam, Religion of Peace or War. It is fantastic. It has direct quotes from the Quran, direct quotes from the Hadith, carefully researched biographical information about Muhammad, what he did, who he was, what he believed, and it's all here. And so it's also beautifully pictorial. It has lovely pictures in it about various places and things. And you wonder what ISIS is and what's going on in the world, we'll give this to you. Now there's something I want to tell you, and I want you to mark this down. The God of the Bible has a name. It is not Allah. It is not Allah. I have said that I thought Allah came from Hubal, who was the moon god of Mecca. Others have said it's a Phoenician, it's a derivation of Baal. But the God of the Bible has a name. And we say, the Psalm says, oh, give thanks unto the Lord, for he is good. His mercy endures forever. We translate it, unto the Lord. But what is the Lord? His name is, in Hebrew, he who causes everything to be. That's what he is. The God of the Bible is the one who caused everything else in the universe to be. He's the creator of the entire universe. And the name Yahweh is Hebrew, Hiphil, for he who causes to be. It's the verb to be, but it's he who causes, and that's what his name is. So he said, that's my name. My name is he who causes everything to be. I'm not Allah. I am Yahweh. So there's a difference. And the God of the Bible is the one who Jesus Christ called the Father. And he said, here's what the Father tells you. Love your enemies. Do good to them that despitefully use you and persecute you. Pray for those. Pray for them. For then you'll be like your Father in heaven, who does good to the evil and to the just. So just keep in mind when we talk about those things. But look, we'll give this to you if you want to call in or write in Islam. You need to know this. I mean, this thing is something else. A Princeton survey came out and said Islam is faster growing than Christianity. It's not true. Christianity is the fastest growing religion in the world. Still is. And Islam is not growing as fast as some of these proponents would like to say. Islam, religion of peace or war. What is it? Terry?
وجود المرأة السعودية على الشاشات يخالف الشرع فعلا.
المرأة نريد ثقافتها، نريد فكرها، نريد مشاركتها في تنمية المجتمع، لكن الذي تصر على أن لابد تخرج في
Erklären Sie uns, was hat der IS-Terror mit dem Islam zu tun?
Das hat schon mit dem Islam etwas zu tun. Erstmal der Name, das heißt der Islamische Staat. Diese Bewegung beruft sich auf den Islam, zitiert die Biografie des Propheten, der Art und Weise, wie der Prophet mit den Ungläubigen umgegangen war, und sieht das als Vorbild, zitiert mehrere Passagen aus dem Koran, die Gewalt gegen Ungläubige rechtfertigen, die Enthauptung von Ungläubigen.
As Muslims, we have a right to bring up our children in accordance with our beliefs, which have served us over the centuries well. Now I give you the same right to bring up your children in the way that you want.
Children themselves.
Well, the rights of the children come when they are they're old enough to understand the issues. Until they get to that age, it's the parents' responsibility. And do you teach them that you may not share that? Punished? You may not share that, but that is my religion. That is the way I've been brought up, and I bring that child into this world. I educate him. I give him everything. It's my right to make sure that I bring him, and I take issue with that. You think that it's wicked? Well, that's your point of view. I know that's going to make him a better human being. And what's missing is when you talk about faith, you don't look at what faith teaches. First and foremost, what faith teaches is that, listen, you're a human being, so respect your fellow human beings. And I think that's an important point that you don't want to discuss.
What is the penalty for
thing that
apostasy?
you fail to discuss, and that's why you've got those prejudicial views about faith.
What is the penalty for apostasy? What do you teach the children will happen to them if they give up the Muslim faith?
Well, let's bring the debate back into Britain.
What is the penalty for apostasy?
I'll tell you what we will do, because we could go down this road a very long way. Let's obviously.
Maryam Namazi was born in Iran before her family left in the wake of the Islamic revolution. You are part of the British Council of Ex-Muslims. I presume that you believe religious principles are not entirely helpful to developing moral values.
No, I actually think that oftentimes religious principles are actually quite immoral, to be quite frank. And I think that if you look at examples where girls are sexualized at a very young age, for example, if you look at Islamic schools where they're forced to veil, where they're taught that they're different from boys, where they're not allowed to listen to music, where they're completely segregated, and many such examples like that. I think, in fact, if there is any good morality that comes out of even religious education, it's not because of religion, it's oftentimes despite religion, and it's the result of an enlightenment and a vast social movement for 21st century values that have had an effect on religion as well.
We'll come to you. Liberian Mohammed Muqaddam, in response to that, I don't want to misreport, but at Muslim schools, the girls are put into a position where they are diminished as human beings.
Well, it's often the case where people are ignorant of what goes on in faith schools and Muslim schools. The fact is, our schools are run along legal lines. They treat both sexes equally, provide them with the best opportunities. So it's often a case of people with prejudices and ignorance.
Mariam?
I mean, I think it's typical of Islamic schools and the political Islamic movement to label any criticism a sort of prejudice and thereby racism, thereby trying to make people silent on criticizing it. I think the issues are very clear. I mean, the head of the Islamia school, for example, was quoted in an interview saying that you're born a Muslim, you're always Muslim, you can't leave. And that's things that have been told to me untold times for having renounced religion and Islam. There is threats, there is intimidations. Just yesterday, a 16-year-old girl was killed by her father for refusing to wear the veil. I think Islamic schools very much do suppress and restrict girls.
From your perspective, presumably you wouldn't be entirely opposed at all to the idea.
I would be thoroughly in favour of education in the Bible as literature. You can't understand English literature without the Bible. You can't take your allusions. And that's an aspect of what the bishop was saying. He's absolutely right. This is a Christian country. Historically, it's a Christian country. You can't understand English history or English literature without a knowledge of the Bible. And by the way, I think I should say that the act of collective worship, I don't approve of it, but nevertheless, the Christian religion, especially I think the Anglican religion, is benign by comparison. If a child at the end of its school career wants to give up religion, the church will quite happily say, okay, go your own way. The penalty for apostasy in the Christian religion is not death. There is no penalty for apostasy at all in the Christian religion. The Christian religion is comparatively benign and we should respect it as such.
Richard Dawkins, does a God-shaped perspective or set of values do any harm to the way in which children should be taught in schools?
Thou shalt have no other God before me, thou shalt make no graven image, thou shalt keep the Sabbath holy. What on earth's that got to do with anything to do with morals? That's the Ten Commandments, or at least 3 of them. It would be deeply depressing if the only way children could get moral values was from religion, either from Scripture, and God knows we don't want them to get it from Scripture, I mean just look at Scripture, or from God, being intimidated by God. Anybody who is good, only those 2 reasons, is not really being good at all. Why not teach children things like the Golden Rule, do as you would be done by? How would you like it if other children did that to you? So why do you do it to them?
So God is not only irrelevant, God is damaging.
I didn't say God was damaging, but I think it's depressing that anybody should suggest that you actually need God in order to be moral. I would hope that our morals come from a better source than that, and that therefore they are genuinely moral rather than based on outmoded scripture or based on fear.
Professor Dawkins said, if a child is born into a family given a certain religion, when that child growing up basically knows more about their religion, and as they grow up they learn about other religions and choose, and
are you saying that the fact that you're brought up within a religious faith doesn't prevent you being open-minded or adopting any religion or none?
Not at all. It does not prevent me from being open to other religions. I, in fact, have come to this country and chose to put the veil on. I have come to this country without a veil on.
So not so very wicked is the view.
What is the penalty for apostasy? What is the penalty for leaving the Muslim faith?
To be honest, I cannot back that point up.
Dr. Mukadam, what is the penalty for apostasy?
And before...
Yeah, we keep coming down this apostasy.
If it was an Islamic country, if it's an Islamic country, then the Sharia is very clear. Apostasy is dealt with the death penalty.
Thank you. That's what I
what's the relevance between what happens in an Islamic country and Great Britain? I fail to see the connection.
Okay, I see.
still on the bestseller lists. At Amazon America, reviewers of The People vs. Mohammed are saying, highly recommended. The book should be required reading. Well done to the author who, in my opinion, is brave and courageous. 5 stars. Stocks are selling so fast, Amazon is continuously restocking their inventory to keep up with demand. J.K. Scheindlin is truly overwhelmed and eternally grateful for the support received. Sadly, the author has, however, received numerous death threats because of its success. But this only shows that Muslims are truly running scared and have realized that their tacky deception tactics are failing. Muhammad was not the perfect human. From what we've been told by numerous subscribers, Muslims are leaving Islam because of this book, although secretly, as apostasy in Islam is certain death. Just go to jkscheindlin.com to be taken directly to the book's listing page.
Let him prove it, their religion of peace.